everyone, welcome back to the channel where we bring the most iconic action stories to life. Today we are diving into a true movie story, Home Alone. Home Alone is a 1990 American Christmas comedy film directed by Chris Columbus and written and produced by John Hughes. The first film in the Home Alone franchise, the film stars MacaulayCulkin as Kevin McAllister, an 8-year-old boy who defends his suburban Chicago home from a home invasion by a pair of robbers after his family accidentally leaves him behind on their Christmas vacation to Paris. The cast also features Joe Pesci, Daniel Stern, John Hurd, and Catherine O'Hara. Hughes conceived Home Alone while on vacation, with Warner Brothers being originally intended to finance and distribute the film. Warner Brothers shut down the production after it exceeded its assigned budget, but it quickly resumed under 20th Century Fox following meetings with Hughes. Columbus and Culkin were hired soon afterwards. Filming took place between February and May 1990 on location across Illinois. Home Alone had a sneak preview across 1,000 theaters on November 10, 1990, and was theatrically released in the United States on November 16. It received mixed to positive reviews and grossed $476.7 million worldwide, becoming the second highest grossing film of 1990. It made Culkin a child star, and was the highest grossing live-action comedy for 2 decades. It was nominated for 2 Academy Awards and 2 Golden Globe Awards. Home Alone has since been considered one of the best Christmas films. In 2023, Home Alone was selected for preservation in the National Film Registry by the Library of Congress as culturally, historically, or aesthetically significant. A sequel, Home Alone 2: Lost in New York, was released in 1992. Plot: the McAllister family prepares to spend Christmas in Paris, gathering at Kate and Peter's home in Winnetka, a Chicago suburb, on the night before their departure. Kate and Peter's youngest son Kevin is ridiculed by his siblings and cousins due to his immaturity. Kevin inadvertently ruins the family dinner after a scuffle with his oldest brother Buzz, resulting in Kate sending him up to the attic. Frustrated with Kate for allowing the rest of the family to pick on him, Kevin wishes that his family would disappear. During the night, heavy winds create a power outage, disabling the alarm clocks and causing the family to oversleep. In the confusion and rush to get to the airport, Kevin is accidentally left behind. Kevin wakes to find the house empty and the family cars still in the garage, unaware that they had rented vans to take them to the airport. Thinking that his wish has come true, he is overjoyed with his newfound freedom. Later, Kevin becomes frightened by his eccentric next-door neighbor, Old Man Miley, rumored to be a serial killer nicknamed the South Bend Shovel Slayer, who murdered his own family. The McAllister home is soon stopped by the Wet Bandits, Harry and Marv, a pair of burglars who have been breaking into other vacant houses in the neighborhood. Kevin tricks them into thinking that his family is still home, forcing them to postpone their plans to rob the McAllister house. Kate realizes mid-flight that Kevin was left behind, and upon arrival in Paris, the family discovers that all flights for the next 2 days are booked, and that the phone lines are still down back home in Chicago. Peter and the rest of the family stay at his brother Rob's apartment in Paris while Kate stays at the airport. Unable to book a flight to Chicago, Kate convinces a couple to trade tickets with her. When she eventually arrives in the U.S., she meets Gus Polinski, the lead member of a traveling polka band, who offers to let her travel with them to Chicago in a moving van on the way to Milwaukee. On Christmas Eve, Harry and Marv finally realize that only Kevin is in the McAllister home, and Kevin overhears them discussing plans to break into the house that night. He starts to miss his family and asks the local Santa Claus impersonator if he could bring them back for Christmas. Kevin attends a church choir performance, eventually re-encountering Marley, who proves the rumors about himself to be false. Marley points out his granddaughter in the choir and mentions he has never met her since she is the daughter of his estranged son. Kevin suggests he try to reconcile with his son. Kevin returns home and rigs the house with handmade booby traps. Harry and Mauve break in, spring the traps, and suffer various injuries. Kevin calls the police and lures the duo into a vacant neighboring house that they had previously broken into. Harry and Mauve ambush Kevin and prepare to get their revenge, but Marley intervenes and knocks them out with his snow shovel. The police arrive and arrest Harry and Mauve, having identified all the houses that they broke into due to Mauve's habit of flooding them. On Christmas Day, Kevin is initially disappointed to find that his family is still gone. However, Kate arrives home and they reconcile. The rest of the family then returns after waiting in Paris for a direct flight to Chicago. Kevin keeps silent about his encounter with Harry and Mauve, although Peter finds Harry's knocked-out gold tooth. Kevin then happily watches Marley reuniting with his family. Cast: MacaulayCulkin as Kevin, an 8-year-old with a penchant for creating harmful inventions. Joe Pesci as Harry, a thief who targets the McAllisters' home with Mauve. Daniel Stern as Mauve, a thief who targets the McAllisters' home with Harry. John Hurd as Peter, Kevin's father. Roberts Blossom as Marley, Kevin's elderly neighbor. Catherine O'Hara as Kate, Kevin's mother. Angela Goethals as Linny, Kevin's older sister. Devin Rottray as Buzz, Kevin's oldest brother who often gets him into trouble. Jerry Bamman as Uncle Frank, Peter's rude, cruel, cantankerous, cheap, and selfish older brother and Kevin's uncle. Hilary Wolfe as Megan, Kevin's oldest sister. John Candy as Gus Polinski, a kind-hearted polka musician who helps Kate. Larry Hankin as Officer Balzac. Michael C. Marana as Jeff, Kevin's older brother. Kristen Mincher as Heather, Kevin's oldest cousin. Diana Campino as Sandra, Kevin's older cousin. Jedediah Cohen as Rod, Kevin's older cousin and Rob's older son who is living with Uncle Frank and Aunt Leslie. Kieran Culkin as Fuller, Kevin's youngest cousin. Cinta Moses as Tracy, Kevin's older cousin. Anna Slotky as Brooke, Kevin's younger cousin. Terry Snell as Aunt Leslie, Uncle Frank's wife and Kevin's aunt. Jeffrey Wiseman as Mitch Murphy, 8-year-old neighbor of the McAllisters whom Heather mistakes for Kevin during the headcount. Virginia Smith as Georgette, Kevin's aunt, wife of Uncle Rob, and mother of Heather, Rod, and Stefan. Matt Doherty as Stefan, Kevin's older cousin and the son of Rob and Georgette. Ralph Footy as Gangster Number 1, Johnny, character in the film Angels with Filthy Souls. Michael Guido as Gangster Number 2, Snakes, character in the film Angels with Filthy Souls. Ray Toller as Uncle Rob, Kevin's uncle, younger brother of Peter and Uncle Frank, and father of Heather, Rod, and Stefan. Billy Bird as Woman in Airport, Irene, who sells Kate her ticket to Dallas. Bill Owen as Man in Airport, Dead, Irene's husband who reluctantly agrees with Irene's ticket sale. Jerry Becker as Officer Number 1. Alan Wilder as Scranton ticket agent. Hope Davis as French ticket agent. Kenneth Hudson Campbell as Santa, local Claus impersonator to whom Kevin expresses his wish for a family reunion. Jim Ortlieb as Herb the drugstore clerk. Credits adapted from the American Film Institute. 4. Writer and producer John Hughes conceived Home Alone while preparing to go on vacation. He said, "I was going away on vacation and making a list of everything I didn't want to forget. I thought, well, I'd better not forget my kids. Then I thought, Wife, I left my 10-year-old son at home. What would he do? 5. Hughes wrote 8 pages of notes that developed into the screenplay. 5. Imagining that children are naturally most scared of robbers, Hughes also worked that aspect into the plot of the film. 5. Home Alone was initially set to be financed and distributed by Warner Brothers. Hughes promised that he could make the movie for less than $10 million, considerably less than most feature film production budgets of that era. Concerned that the film might exceed that amount, Hughes met secretly with 20th Century Fox before production to see if they would fund the project if Warner Brothers proved inflexible. According to executive producer Scott Rosenfeld, a copy of the script was clandestinely delivered to Fox, bypassing the legal restrictions that would have otherwise prevented Fox from seeing it until the project was in turnaround. 6. Early in production, the budget grew to $14.7 million. Warner Brothers demanded that it be cut by $1.2 million. The producers responded with a memo arguing that the budget could not be cut any further. Unconvinced, Warner Brothers shut down production the next day, but it quickly resumed when Fox took up Hughes on his offer. The final budget grew to $18 million. 6. Hughes had asked Patrick Red Johnson to direct, but he was committed to directing Space Invaders, 1990. 7. He turned to Chris Columbus, who had left National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation, 1989, before shooting started because of a personality clash with starring actor Chevy Chase, who Columbus said treated him like dirt. Bait. Hughes gave him the scripts for both Home Alone and Reach the Rock. 1998, Columbus chose to direct Home Alone, as he found it funnier and liked the Christmas theme. 9. 10. Columbus did an uncredited rewrite of the script. Among his contributions was the character of Old Man Marley, which he created to give the story a more serious layer, as well as a more emotional, happier ending. 11. Casting. MacaulayCulkin, pictured in 1991, was the child star of the film. Hughes suggested to Columbus that they cast MacaulayCulkin as Kevin because of his experience while shooting Uncle Buck, 1989. Columbus met with 200 other actors for the part, as he felt it was his directorial responsibility. 10. 12. John Mulaney was asked to audition for the role of Kevin after being scouted in a children's sketch comedy group, but his parents refused the opportunity. 13. Columbus finally met with Culkin and agreed he was the right choice. 10. Before Catherine O'Hara and John Hurd would be cast as the parents, considerations for the roles included Susan Sarandon, Kirstie Alley, Blythe Danner, Joanna Cassidy and Candice Bergen for Kate, and Sam Waterston, David Dukes, and Danny Aiello for Peter. James Stewart and Vincent Gardenia had been considered for the role of Marley before Robert's Blossom was chosen. 14. After Robert De Niro and Jon Lovitz turned down the role of Harry, Joe Pesci was cast. 15. He informed the producers he was offer only, so the producers didn't audition him. Tim Curry, Joe Pantoliano, and Zach Norman were also considered before Pesci ultimately accepted the role. 14. The role of Uncle Frank was written for Kelsey Grammer, but was given to Jerry Bamman when Grammer was unavailable. 16. 17. Daniel Stern was cast as Marv, but before shooting started, he was told that the production schedule had been extended from 6 weeks to 8. He dropped out after as he would not be paid more for the extended schedule. Daniel Roebuck was hired to replace him, but after 2 days of rehearsal, Columbus felt he was lacking chemistry with Pesci and brought back Stern. 6. Roebuck later said that, although he was upset to be fired from the production, he now believed the experience was a little blip of unimportance. 18. Chris Farley auditioned for the role of the Santa Claus impersonator, but he failed to impress Columbus. 19. 20. John Candy was available for only one day to film his scenes, which took 23 hours to shoot. He was paid only $414, since he did the film as a favor to Hughes. In return, he was the only actor Hughes allowed to go off script. According to Columbus, all his dialogue was improvised. Principal photography took place from February 14, 1990, to May 8, 1990, over a course of 83 days on an $18.3 million budget. 21. The house exterior scenes were filmed on location at a three-story single-family house located at 671 Lincoln Avenue. 24. In the North Shore village of Winnetka, Illinois, where many of Hughes' previous films had also been shot. 25. But at different houses. The only interiors of the house used for filming that made it to the finished film were the main staircase, attic, and most of the first-floor landing. 26. While all the other interiors of the house were duplicated on a soundstage to allow more room for equipment and crew. These sets were built in the then-disused gym of New Trier High School's West Campus, previously used by Hughes for Uncle Buck and Ferris Bueller's Day Off, where the production company had already set up its offices. 671 Lincoln Avenue later became a tourist attraction. 27. The tree house in the backyard was built specifically for the film and dismantled after filming ended. Kevin runs away from his third encounter with Miley in Hubbard Woods Park in Winnetka. 28. In addition, the scene where Kevin wades in his neighbor's flooded basement was shot at the empty swimming pool of the aforementioned campus of New Trier High School, with the American Airlines DC-10 first-class cabin interiors done on the basketball courts. The church exteriors were shot at Trinity United Methodist Church in Wilmette, Illinois, while the interiors were shot at Grace Episcopal Church in Oak Park, Illinois. 29. Filming also took place over 4 16-hour days at O'Hare International Airport, which served for both itself and Orly Airport in Paris. John Candy filmed his cameo appearance for the film over the course of one day at Meeks Field. For the film within a film, Angels with Filthy Souls, the title of which parodies the 1938 crime film Angels with Dirty Faces, shooting took only one day, on the final, test day, prior to the official start of principal photography. To create the illusion that the film was an authentic 1940s gangster film, the scene was filmed on black and white negative film, and Johnny's office featured props from that era. Like much of the film, most of the sequence was shot with low, wide angles that, according to journalist Darren King, capture the action as if a child were perceiving it. 30. Originally, Ralph Footy was to play Snakes and Michael Guido was to play Johnny, but since Footy had recently undergone knee replacement surgery, he was unable to do the death scene where Snakes drops to his knees, leading to the roles being switched. 31. Cinematographer Julio Maquet recalled that Pesci was more difficult to work with than Culkin. The older actor believed some of the dialogue was not of a quality commensurate with his acting ability. He also resented the early unit calls, since they prevented him from starting his day with 9 holes of golf as he preferred to do. 6. After he took the assistant director by the collar one day to complain about this, daily call times were moved back from 7 to 9 a.m. to accommodate his rounds. 32. On the other end of the schedule, the crew had limited time to film the many nighttime scenes, since Culkin could not work any later than 10 p.m. due to his age. On the set, Pesci and Stern both had difficulty refraining from cursing, which became annoying to Pesci, since Culkin was on set as well. In fact, the only curse words that made it into the film were "shit," accidentally said by Daniel Stern when his shoe fell through the pet door, and "hell," which was said by both Pesci and Stern after their characters encounter one another after going through Kevin's booby traps, and by Johnny to the character of Snakes in Angels with Filthy Souls. Pesci's use of cartoon cursing, or menacing gibberish, garnered comparisons to Looney Tunes character Yosemite Sam. The film's stunts also created tension for the crew during shooting. Columbus said, "Every time the stunt guys did one of those stunts it wasn't funny. We'd watch it, and I would just pray that the guys were alive." Stunts were originally prepared with safety harnesses, but because of their visibility on camera, the film's final stunts were performed without them. 10. Troy Brown and Leon Delaney were stuntmen for Pesci and Stern, respectively. 37. An injury had occurred between Pesci and Culkin during one of the rehearsals for the scene in which Harry tries to bite off Kevin's finger. Culkin still has the scar. The tarantula that walks on Stern's face was real. Santa Moses, who played Tracy, recalled in 2020 that one of the most difficult scenes to shoot was the family's run through O'Hare International Airport to catch their flight. While it does not last long, it required several days to film. There were thousands of extras, all expertly choreographed so none of us would be in danger running at full speed through the American Airlines terminal, she told The Hollywood Reporter. And we ran at full speed. Sometimes we'd bump into each other, like a multi-car pileup on the expressway, and just crack up laughing. There were so many setups and narrowly missed moments of disaster, but to my knowledge, no one got hurt. Home Alone had a sneak preview screening for about 1,000 theaters on November 10, 1990. The advanced screening proved successful, with 5% of the preview audience returning for its official release the following week. Originally scheduled to be released on Thanksgiving weekend, its opening date was brought forward to avoid competition with Three Men and a Little Lady, 41. It was given a wide release on November 16, 1990. Home media. Home Alone was first released by Fox Video on VHS and Laserdisc in the United States on August 22, 1991. 43. Their first video to go direct to sell-through rather than to the video rental market first. 44. It sold 11 million copies, generating Fox revenue of $150 million. 45. Making it, along with E.T. the Extraterrestrial, the highest-selling video of all time at that point. 44. Due to the sales, the film did not perform as well in the rental market. 44. It was later released on DVD on October 5, 1999, as a basic package. 46. The film was released on Blu-ray on December 2, 2008, titled Family Fun Edition. 47. And was released alongside Home Alone 2, Lost in New York in a collection pack on October 5, 2010. 48. The film was reissued again on DVD and Blu-ray on October 6, 2015, alongside all four of its sequels in a box set titled Home Alone, 25th Anniversary Ultimate Collector's Christmas Edition. Home Alone was the #1 film at the box office for 12 consecutive weeks, from its release weekend of November 16 to 18, 1990, through the weekend of February 1 to 3, 1991. It was removed from the top spot when Sleeping with the Enemy opened with $13 million. 51. It remained in the top 10 until the weekend of April 26, while past Easter weekend. It made 2 more appearances in the top 10, the weekend of May 31 to June 2 and the weekend of June 14 to 16, before finally falling out of the top 10. 53. After over 9 months into its run, the film had earned 16x its debut weekend and ended up making a final gross of $285,761,243. The top-grossing film of its year in North America. 54. The film is listed in the Guinness World Records as the highest-grossing live-action comedy ever. 55. And held the record until it was overtaken by The Hangover Part 2 in 2011. As for the record for being highest-grossing live-action comedy film domestically, it would last until 2023 when Barbie surpassed it. By the time the film had run its course in theaters, Home Alone was the third highest grossing film of all time worldwide, as well as in the United States and Canada, behind only Star Wars, $322 million at the time, and Need to the Extraterrestrial, $399 million at the time, according to the Home Video Box. Box Office Mojo estimates that the film sold over 67.7 million tickets in the United States. It was also the highest-grossing Christmas film until it was surpassed by Dr. Seuss' The Grinch in 2018, 58.59. The film made Culkin a child star. Variety magazine praised the film for its cast. Gene Cooper of The Washington Post praised the film for its comedic approach. 68. Hal Hinson, also of The Washington Post, praised Columbus's direction and Culkin's performance. 69. Although Karen James of the New York Times complained that the film's first half is flat and unsurprising as its cute little premise suggests, she praised the second half for its slapstick humor. She also praised the dialogue between Kevin and Marley, as well as the film's final scenes. 70. Roger Ebert of the Chicago Sun-Times gave the film a 2.5 out of a 4-star rating. He compared the elaborate booby traps in the film to Rube Goldberg machines, writing, "They're the kinds of traps that any 8-year-old could devise, if he had a budget of tens of thousands of dollars and the assistance of a crew of movie special effects people," and criticized the plot as so implausible that it makes it hard for Kim to really care about the plight of the kid, Kevin. However, he praised Culkin's performance. 71. Owen Gleiberman of Entertainment Weekly magazine gave the film a D grade, criticizing the film for its sadistic festival of adult passion. Gleiberman said that John Hughes is pulling our strings as though he'd never learned to do anything else. 72. Peter Bradshaw of The Guardian gave the film 3 out of 5 and praised Culkin's vivid screen presence, almost incandescent with confidence. However, he criticized his acting, calling it a bit broad and mannered. 60. Ollie Buckley of the BBC wrote, Culkin walks a fine line between annoyance and endearment throughout the film. He also called Home Alone a film which manages to capture some of the best qualities of Christmas. 73. Naomi Bonwell of Robles said that Home Alone has all the ingredients that make for a great kids' film. 74. Adrian Turner of Radio Times called the movie a celebration of enterprise that captured the heart and wickedness of every child on the planet. 75. According to TV Guide, Home Alone's slapstick falls flat and only the pain remains. 76. Peter Rayner of the Los Angeles Times criticized the gags, writing they leave a sour aftertaste. He added, this film plays better as a trailer than as a full-length film, when a trailer lets viewers appreciate those, without having to fight off a lot of unsettling associations. Home Alone remains a highly popular Christmas movie in Poland, when it is played on Polsat every Christmas Eve. In 2010, Polsat did not play Home Alone, which caused over 90,000 people to protest on Facebook. 88. In 2016, over 4.44 million Poles tuned in to Polsat to watch Home Alone. Since the 2010s, its TV trailers even include a tagline that acknowledges this popularity, Christmas without him? It's absolutely impossible. 89. The movie is also highly popular in Romania, being played by Pro TV since 1995, except 2021 when the movie was played by Antena 1. In 2014, over 2.7 million Romanians watched the movie on Pro TV, citation needed. Julio Macat, the film's cinematographer, considers Home Alone his favorite film out of all the projects he has shot. It was the favorite film of former U.S. President Gerald Ford. 90. Accolades. At the 12th Youth in Film Awards, Macaulay Culkin won Best Young Actor starring in a Motion Picture, 91, the film was nominated for 2 Academy Awards, one for Best Original Score, which was written by John Williams, and the other for Best Original Song for Somewhere in My Memory, music by Williams and lyrics by Leslie Bricusse, but lost to Dances with Wolves and Dick Tracy respectively. The 1989 French horror thriller film 3615 Code Père Noël, which is about a young boy who is home alone with his elderly grandfather and has to fend off a home invader dressed up as Santa Claus, has been noted for its plot similarities to Home Alone. 103. 3615 Code Père Noël director René Manzo threatened the producers of Home Alone with legal action on the grounds of plagiarism, alleging that Home Alone was a remake of his film. 104. 105. 3615 Code Père Noël was not released in the United States during its original theatrical run in January 1990 and did not become widely available there until 2018. 106. 107. Use in media. The music video for Snoop Dogg's 1994 song, Gin and Juice, opens with a dad where, after a teenaged Snoop's parents have left him to watch the house in their absence, he places his hands to his face and yells in the manner of Kevin McAllister in the first film, while a title comes on screen reading, Homeboy Alone. 108. In December 2015, Culkin reprised his role as an adult Kevin McAllister in the inaugural episode of the Jack Dishell web series DIYVRS, in which a visibly disturbed McAllister recounts his experiences from the events of the first film and subsequently uses his signature tactics against a gunman. 109. In response, Daniel Stern posted a short video reprising his role as Marv, released in conjunction with Stern's Reddit AMA, pleading for support from Harry against McAllister's traps. 110. The 2016 Christmas set horror film Better Watch Out includes a scene where a character who is obsessed with the Home Alone films demonstrates how, in real life, it would be deadly for someone to be hit in the face with a paint can swung from a distance. 111. The season 13 episode of It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, Charlie's Home Alone, is intended to be a direct parody of the first Home Alone film. In the episode, Charlie Kelly is accidentally forgotten while the rest of the gang attend Super Bowl 52. Charlie mistakenly believes he must protect the bar by setting up traps, only for himself to accidentally activate said traps, nearly preventing from performing his Super Bowl rituals. 112. On December 15, 2018, Culkin made a guest appearance as himself in an episode of Angry Video Game Nerd to review multiple video game adaptations of the first 2 Home Alone films, as well as a gameplay session of The Pagemaster with James Rolfe and Mike Matei in the days following that episode's release. 113. On December 19, 2018, Culkin again reprised his role as McAllister in a 60-second advertisement for Google Assistant titled Home Alone Again, which parodies the original film. The commercial contains shot-for-shot remakes of several scenes from the film in which McAllister uses several of the product's functions. The concluding scene involves a command sequence intended to make the house look active, parodying the original, Rockin' Around the Christmas Tree scene. 114. Home Alone is prominently referenced in the 2022 Christmas action comedy film Violent Night, in which the character Trudy Lightstone, a fan of the film, imitates Kevin's fighting tactics against burglars who take her family hostage. 115. Other media. Novelization. Home Alone, ISBN 0-590-55066-7, was novelized by Todd Strasser and published by Scholastic in 1990 to coincide with the film. 116. On October 6, 2015, to celebrate the 25th anniversary of the movie, an illustrated book, ISBN 1-594-74858-6. by Kim Smith and Quirk Books was released. sequels and franchise. Main article, Home Alone, franchise. The film was followed by a commercially successful sequel in 1992, Home Alone 2, Lost in New York, which brought back most of the first film's cast. Culkin was paid $4.5 million to appear in the sequel, compared to $110,000 for the original. 119. The film within a film, Angels with Filthy Souls, had a sequel in Home Alone 2, Angels with Even Filthier Souls. Both Angels metafilms featured character actor Ralph Footy as stereotypical 1930s mobster Johnny. 120. A third film, Home Alone 3, was released in 1997. It has entirely different actors and characters as well as a different storyline, with Hughes writing the screenplay. 121. A television film followed in 2002, Home Alone 4, Taking Back the House. The movie features some of the same characters who were in the first two films, but with a new cast and a storyline. 122. The fifth film, Home Alone, The Holiday Heist, premiered during ABC Family's Countdown to 25 Days of Christmas programming event on November 25, 2012. 123. Similarly to the third film, it does not focus on the McAllister family. 124. Chris Columbus later revealed that there had been discussions on a sequel starring Kevin's son. This was talked about maybe 10 years ago. Don't know, we were just having fun with it, and we said, what if Kevin is an adult and he has a kid? But it was still Pesci and Stern. Pesci and Stern are still obsessed with this kid. They're going to get this kid. 125. Another idea that was once discussed involved an adult Kevin attempting revenge on Harry and Marv, who have reformed in the years since they last met. The studio declined to make the film despite Columbus and Culkin's interest in the idea. 126. A sixth film was released digitally on Disney Plus on November 12, 2021, titled Home Sweet Home Alone. 127. Devin Ratray, who played Buzz McAllister in the first two films, reprised his role in the film. Christopher Joseph Columbus, 1, born September 10, 1958, is an American filmmaker. Born in Spangler, Pennsylvania, Columbus studied film at New York University's Tisch School of the Arts, where he developed an interest in filmmaking. After writing screenplays for several teen comedies in the mid-1980s, including Gremlins, The Goonies, and Young Sherlock Holmes, he made his directorial debut with a teen adventure, Adventures in Babysitting, 1987. Columbus gained recognition soon after with the highly successful Christmas comedy Home Alone, 1990, and its sequel, Home Alone 2, Lost in New York, 1992. The comedy Mrs. Doubtfire, 1993, starring Robin Williams, was another box office success for Columbus. He went on to direct several other films throughout the 1990s, which were mostly met with lukewarm reception. However, he found commercial success again for directing the film adaptations of J.K. Rowling's novels, Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, 2001, and its sequel, Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets, 2002. In addition to directing, Columbus was a producer of Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban, 2004, and the drama The Help, 2011, for which he was nominated for the Academy Award for Best Picture. He also directed the fantasy Percy Jackson and the Olympians, The Lightning Thief, 2010, and the 3D action comedy Pixels, 2015. Columbus is the co-founder of 1492 Pictures, a film production company that has produced some of his films since 1995. More recently, he co-founded another production firm with his daughter in 2014, called Maiden Voyage Pictures. In 2017, he launched ZAG Animation Studios, alongside Michael Bonathan, Chaim Sabin, and Jeremy Zag. Columbus is also known for his collaboration with composer John Williams, with whom he has worked both on the first 2 Home Alone films and the first 2 Harry Potter films. He studied at New York University's film school at the Tisch School of the Arts, where he was a classmate of screenwriter Charlie Kaufman and Alec Baldwin. 13. Although he received a scholarship, he forgot to renew it and was forced to take a factory job to pay for schooling. 14. While on shifts, he secretly worked on a 20-page screenplay, which one of his teachers would later use to help him get an agent. 14. Columbus now states that the experience saved my life, and he was able to acknowledge the terrifying reality I faced of having to live and work in that factory for the rest of my life in that town if I didn't make it. 14. Columbus graduated from NYU in 1980. Columbus' professional career began in the early 1980s as a writer for the screenplay of Reckless, 1984. Columbus later said, "It wasn't my best work. I intended it to be semi-biographical, and the film was based on my attempts to break free. But the director turned it into a clumsy teen sex drama, and the experience was so degrading." 17. Dissatisfied, Columbus conceived a new screenplay while living in an apartment loft, a comedy horror titled Gremlins, 1984. In late 1981, he eventually received a phone call from Steven Spielberg, who expressed an interest in buying the script. Upon release, the film was a critical success. Columbus then moved to Los Angeles to work for Spielberg's Amblin Entertainment, writing more scripts including The Goonies and Young Sherlock Holmes, both 1985. 17. After staying in Los Angeles for 2 years, he said, "There's an unreality to the place, a lack of connection with real people." 18. He decided to move back to New York City. He wrote episodes for the animated series Galaxy High, 1986, and received screenwriting credit for Little Nemo, Adventures in Slumberland, 1989. Columbus then started his directing career with the teen comedy Adventures in Babysitting, 1987. The film received mixed reviews from critics and was regarded as a mediocre debut. 19. Next, he wrote and directed Heartbreak Hotel, 1988, which is a story about Elvis Presley being abducted and finding himself offering counsel and help to a small-town family. The film was a commercial failure at the box office, and it also received mixed to negative reviews. 20. Culkin in 1991. Home Alone made Culkin, pictured here in 1991, a child star. In the late 1980s, fellow filmmaker John Hughes approached Columbus to direct Home Alone, 1990, a comedy film written by Hughes, where 8-year-old Kevin McAllister must defend his home from 2 burglars. Columbus had left National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation before shooting started, because of a personality clash with actor Chevy Chase, who Columbus said treated him like Dirk. 21. Columbus particularly enjoyed the Christmas theme of the Home Alone script and quickly accepted the offer. 22. Subsequently, Columbus hired Macaulay Culkin, Joe Pesci, Daniel Stern, John Hurd, and Catherine O'Hara as the principal cast. Filming took 4 months between February and May 1990, and the film was released to theaters on November 16, 1990, to commercial success. Home Alone grossed $285 million in North America and $190 million elsewhere for a worldwide $476.7 million, against a budget of $18 million. 23. Nominated for 2 Academy Awards and 2 Golden Globe Awards, the film served as Culkin's breakthrough role. 24. 25. Dave Kerr of Chicago Tribune praised Hughes for writing recognizable characters, and Columbus for direction with wit and warmth. 26. Home Alone has since been regarded as a classic to watch during the holiday season. 27. 1991 to 2000, Comedies and Romances. In 1991, Columbus wrote and directed the romantic comedy drama Only the Lonely, 1991, with John Hughes serving as co-producer, 19, starring John Candy, Maureen O'Hara, Ali Sheedy, and Anthony Quinn. The film depicts a Chicago policeman who must balance his loyalty between his mother and a shy funeral home employee, a loose adaptation of Marty. The film managed to garner some favorable reviews despite performing tepidly at the box office. 28. In 1992, Columbus returned to direct the sequel to the first film, titled Home Alone 2, Lost in New York. Featuring the same principal cast of its predecessor, the plot takes place 1 year after the events of the first film. The film follows Kevin McAllister as he accidentally boards the wrong flight to New York City and finds himself confronted by the two same burglars in the first film. Home Alone 2, Lost in New York was released on November 20, 1992, to mixed reviews, but strong box office results, grossing $359 million worldwide. 29. Janet Maslin for the New York Times wrote that Home Alone may second be lazily conceived, but it is staged with a sense of occasion and a lot of holiday cheer. The return of Mr. Culkin in this role is irresistible, even if this utterly natural comic actor has been given little new to do. Mr. Pesci and Mr. Stern bring great gusto to their characters' stupidity. 30. Columbus' next directorial feature was Mrs. Doubtfire, 1993, an adaptation of Anne Fine's novel alias Madame Doubtfire about an unemployed father who disguises himself as a nanny so he can spend time with his children. Starring Robin Williams, Sally Field, and Pierce Brosnan, Williams was given creative freedom to improvise his lines, provoking amusement to all of the cast and crew. 31. The film was released by 20th Century Fox in November 1993 to mixed and positive reception. Film review aggregator Rotten Tomatoes gave the film an approval rating of 72%, praising Williams. 32. Roger Ebert calls Williams a mercurial talent who loves to dart in and out of many different characters and voices, but thought Mrs. Doubtfire has the values and depth of a sitcom. 33. However, the film performed well at the box office, earning $441.3 million worldwide. 34. The film also won the Academy Award for Best Makeup, Golden Globe Award for Best Actor and Golden Globe Award for Best Picture. 35. 36. In 1995, Columbus co-founded his own production company, 1492 Pictures, named after the year that Christopher Columbus reached the Americas, has a pun on his own name. 37. He then wrote and directed another film, a remake of the French film Neuf Mois titled 9 Months, 1995, which was produced by 1492 Pictures. A romantic comedy, 9 Months starred Hugh Grant, Julianne Moore, Tom Arnold, Joan Cusack, Jeff Goldblum, and Robin Williams. The story centers on a man who finds out that his longtime girlfriend is pregnant and has to change his lifestyle. Although the film was criticized for being mismanaged to 19, it was a commercial success, grossing $138.5 million at the box office. 38. Columbus followed up on this effort with Stepmom, 1998, a comedy drama starring Julia Roberts, Susan Sarandon, and Ed Harris. Writing for the Los Angeles Times, Kenneth Turan praises Roberts and Harris's performances despite the script having a tiny handful of honest moments. 39. With an estimated budget of $50 million, the film grossed a healthy $159.7 million worldwide. 40. Sarandon also earned a Golden Globe nomination for Best Actress in a Motion Picture Drama. 41. Columbus collaborated again with Robin Williams for his next project, 1999's Bicentennial Man based on the novel The Positronic Man by Isaac Asimov and Robert Silverberg. The film tells the story of a robot who becomes human-like and acquires emotions. The supporting cast included Sam Neill, Beth Davids, Wendy Crewson, and Oliver Platt. The film was released on December 17, 1999, and was a commercial failure, grossing $87.4 million from a budget of $100 million. 42. Critical response to the film were mixed, with Ben Falk of the BBC describing it as the worst kind of movie, one with no direction, no identity, and above all no heart. 43. Peter Stack of San Francisco Chronicle opined of the film, "It's a bit strange and strained. More syrupy melodrama than comedy, doesn't have much of the usual Williams manic antics, but complements the computer-generated imagery." 44. Bicentennial Man was nominated for the Academy Award for Best Makeup at the 72nd Academy Awards. 45. 2001 to 2010, Harry Potter and Other Film Series. Harry Potter Principal Cast. Cast of the Harry Potter film series: Daniel Radcliffe, Emma Watson, and Rupert Grint. 2011. After reading J.K. Rowling's 1997 fantasy novel Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, Columbus expressed a strong desire to direct the film adaptation. In 2000, he convinced Warner Brothers to select him as director for it. 17. The film is the first installment of the Harry Potter film series and was written by Steve Kloves and produced by David Heyman. The story follows Harry Potter's first year at Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry and his self-discovery as a famous wizard. Columbus relocated to the United Kingdom with his family to focus on directing. 17. Columbus said the casting process was very intense, but Daniel Radcliffe, Rupert Grint, and Emma Watson were eventually picked for the lead roles. 46. Filming began on September 29, 2000, and lasted for 180 days. The film premiered at the Odeon Leicester Square in London on November 4, 2001, to critical and commercial success, grossing $975.1 million worldwide. 47. The film was praised for its sets, costumes, casting, musical score, cinematography, and special effects. 48. In addition, it was nominated for 3 Academy Awards for Best Original Score, Best Art Direction, and Best Costume Design. 49. In 2002, Columbus returned to direct the second installment, Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets. 2002, based on Rowling's second novel. Featuring much of the same cast from the first film, the story follows Harry Potter's second year at the school when a chamber is opened, unleashing a monster. Producer David Heyman said, "Fortunately, we benefited from the experience of the first film. The cast have maintained their enthusiasm, sense of wonder." 50. Columbus also opted to use more handheld cameras for freedom of movement. 50. The film was released to theaters on November 15, 2002. Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets shared similar critical acclaim to the first film, and grossed $879 million worldwide. 51. A.L. Scott of the New York Times observed that the film was long but praised it for the special effects and thrilling sequences. 52. At the 2003 BAFTA Awards, the film garnered nominations for Best Production Design, Best Sound, and Best Special Visual Effects. 53. In 2004, Columbus wrote and produced Christmas with the Cranks, a Christmas comedy based on the 2001 novel Stupid Christmas by John Grisham. The film was a box office success but received mostly negative reviews. 54. In the same year, Columbus returned for the third installment of the Harry Potter series, Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban. Physically exhausted from the first 2 films, he decided not to direct but serve as producer alongside Heyman and director Alfonso Cuarón, 55. The film premiered on May 31, 2004, in the United Kingdom to strong critical praise and earned $796.9 million worldwide, 56. After returning to the United States in 2005, Columbus intended to produce a superhero film, Fantastic Four, but due to disagreements with director Tim Story, he was fired, 57. Next, he directed 2005's Rent, a musical drama. Adapted from the 1996 Broadway musical of the same name. The film, starring 6 of the original Broadway cast members, depicts the lives of several bohemians and their struggles living in East Village of New York City from 1989 to 1990. The film had mixed reviews and a poor box office performance, 58-59. In 2006, Columbus served as a producer for Night at the Museum, a fantasy film based on the 1993 children's book of the same name by illustrator Milan Trek, and is the first installment in the Night at the Museum series. The film stars Ben Stiller as Larry Daly, a father who applies for a job at the American Museum of Natural History and subsequently discovers that the exhibits come to life at night. Next, he served as an executive producer for Fantastic Four: Rise of the Silver Surfer, 2007, a sequel to the first film which was also a commercial success, 60. In 2009, he produced Night at the Museum, Battle of the Smithsonian, the second installment of the series. Despite mixed reviews, the film was a box office success, earning $413.1 million worldwide, 61. That same year, he directed I Love You, Beth Cooper, a comedy starring Hayden Panettiere and Paul Rust, based on a novel by Larry Doyle. The film was released in July 2009 to negative reviews. Peter Travers of Rolling Stone wrote that Columbus flattens every joke and sucks the life out of the actors, adding it is super bad. 62. Despite this setback, Columbus was hired by 20th Century Fox to direct Percy Jackson and the Olympians, The Lightning Thief, 2010, which he also produced. The film is the first installment in the Percy Jackson series and is based on fantasy Greek mythology, the 2005 novel The Lightning Thief by Rick Riordan. Starring an ensemble led by Logan Lerman, the film received mixed reviews and was panned by fans of the original series, but found box office success upon its release in February, 63. The film grossed $226.4 million worldwide, 64. Kenneth Turan of the Los Angeles Times described it as unadventurous and uninteresting, and criticized screenwriter Craig Titley for changing the original story, 65. The Toronto Star's Linda Bonnard praised Columbus' ability to woo a young audience, but the film lacked Harry Potter charm, 66. 2011, present, focus as a producer and Pixels. As early as 2009, Variety magazine reported that Columbus, Michael Bonathan, and Mark Radcliffe were working on a film adaptation of Catherine Stockett's novel The Help, 67, released in 2011. The film of the same name was directed by Tig Taylor with Columbus serving as producer. The film and novel recount the story of a young white aspiring journalist, Eugenia Steeder Phelan, and her relationship with 2 black maids, Dabeline Clark and Minnie Jackson, during the civil rights movement. The film received critical and commercial success, earning $216.6 million worldwide, 68. Roger Ebert described it as involving and wonderfully acted, and Amy Biancali of the San Francisco Chronicle called it a film that makes us root for the good guys, hiss at the bad and convulse in laughter when good wreaks vengeance with a smile. 69. At the 84th Academy Awards, Octavia Spencer won the Academy Award for Best Supporting Actress for her role. The film also received 3 other nominations: Best Picture, Best Actress, and Best Supporting Actress for Jessica Chastain. 70. The film won the Screen Actors Guild Award for Outstanding Performance by a Cast in a Motion Picture. 71. Ned Vizzini and Columbus at the New York Comic Con, 2012. Ned Vizzini and Columbus at the New York Comic Con, 2012. In 2013, Columbus co-authored the House of Secrets book series with Ned Vizzini. 72. Shortly, Columbus returned to the Percy Jackson series as an executive producer for the sequel titled Percy Jackson: Sea of Monsters. Directed by Thor Freudenthal and starring much of the cast from the previous installment, the film grossed $200.9 million worldwide. 73. However, it received a divided critical reaction. 74. Columbus next produced Night at the Museum: Secret of the Tomb, the final installment in the Night at the Museum series. Released in December 2014, the film was a financial success, grossing $363.2 million at the box office. 75. It was also Robin Williams' final film appearance before his death. In 2014, Columbus co-founded production company Maiden Voyage Pictures with his daughter, Eleanor. 76. 77. He also co-founded an animation studio called ZAG Animation Studios with Saban Capital Group and ZAG Entertainment. 78. Columbus directed the science fiction comedy Pixels, 2015. He first learned about the project from Adam Sandler. Of that encounter, he said, "He gave me the Pixels script after we hit it off. My daughter read it and said, 'You have to read this movie. It's completely fun and unexpected.'" 79. The film is based on Patrick Jane's 2010 short film of the same name, which depicts aliens who attack the Earth in the form of arcade video games. Principal photography took 3 months in Toronto, after which computer-generated imagery and visual effects were then applied. Starring Sandler, Kevin James, Michelle Monaghan, Peter Dinklage, Josh Gad, and Brian Cox, Pixels was met with mixed reviews but earned $244.9 million at the box office. Beatty, Marjorie Baumgarten of the Austin Chronicle said the film is flat-footed and grows tedious after the first hour, but praised the 3D effects which enhances the action. 81. Peter Travers of Rolling Stone gave the film 1 star out of 4, calling it a 3D metaphor for Hollywood's digital assault on our eyes and brains. Relentless and exhausting. 82. Also in 2015, Columbus served as a producer for 3 films: supernatural horror The Witch, Italian drama Mediterranea, and a comedy titled It Had to Be You. During 2016, Columbus produced small-scale and independent features. First, The Young Messiah, a fictional story of a 7-year-old Jesus who tries to discover the truth about his life when he returns to Nazareth from Egypt. Second, Tallulah, a comedy drama starring Elliot Page, Allison Janney, and Tammy Blanchard. The film is about a young woman who takes a baby from its negligent mother and pretends the child is her own. Tallulah premiered at the Sundance Film Festival on January 23, 2016, and was released on Netflix on July 29, 2016. 83. 84. In 2017, Columbus served as an executive producer for Minashi, 85, and a producer for Patty Cake Dollar and I Killed Giants. Columbus also produced The Christmas Chronicles, 2018, a family film directed by Clay Cates. Columbus's films are often grounded in stories about unconventional and dysfunctional families, and explore characters who lose their loved ones. He is regarded as a sentimental filmmaker due to his exploration of contemporary domesticity. 97. 98. One of the themes I've always been fascinated by is a character facing the potential of losing their family and what that means. Columbus said in 2017-99, Columbus is also known for creating emotionally vivid scenes, and admits that he is drawn to extreme emotions. 100. Boren Wazer of The Guardian states that Columbus prefers characters that are the everyday American men, women, and children who struggle to uphold family traditions against a changing, sometimes intimidating society. 3. In 1993, Columbus said, "I can understand the validity of showing people the ugliness of the world, but I also think there is a place for movies to leave people with a sense of hope. If your film isn't going to do that, I just don't think it's worth making." 3. Culture website Datake opined that Columbus excels in creating heartwarming family films with untrained child actors, but found box office success without an incredibly distinct cinematic style to his work. John Wilden Hughes Jr., February 18, 1950 to August 6, 2009, was an American director, producer, and screenwriter. He is best known for writing, producing, and directing such films as 16 Candles, The Breakfast Club, Weird Science, Ferris Bueller's Day Off, Planes, Trains and Automobiles, and Uncle Buck, and writing Pretty in Pink and Home Alone. Most of Hughes' works were set in Chicago. His films often combine slapstick comedy with heartfelt moments. Actors whose careers Hughes helped launch include John Candy, Molly Ringwald, Matthew Broderick, Anthony Michael Hall, and MacaulayCulkin. Hughes has since been considered an icon defining the 1980s with his coming-of-age stories, capturing the teenage experience and shaping the teen movie genre. Early life and education. Hughes was born on February 18, 1950, in Lansing, Michigan, to Marion Crawford, who volunteered in charity work, and John Wilden Hughes, who worked in sales. 2. He was the only boy, and had 3 sisters. He spent the first 12 years of his life in Grosse Pointe, Michigan, where he was a fan of Detroit Red Wings right-winger Gordie Howe. One of Howe's number 9 jerseys, sent by Howe himself. 3. Was later prominently featured in Hughes' 1986 film Ferris Bueller's Day Off. 4. Hughes described himself as kind of quiet, frowny face. 5. I grew up in a neighborhood that was mostly girls and old people. There weren't any boys my age, so I spent a lot of time by myself, imagining things. And every time we would get established somewhere, we would move. Life just started to get good in 7th grade, and then we moved to Chicago. I ended up in a really big high school, and I didn't know anybody. But then the Beatles came along and changed my whole life. And then Bob Dylan's Bringing It All Back Home came out and really changed me. Thursday I was one person, and Friday I was another. My heroes were Dylan, John Lennon, and Picasso, because they each moved their particular medium forward, and when they got to the point where they were comfortable, they always moved on. Hughes as a junior at Glenbrook North High School, 1967. In 1963, Hughes' family moved to Northbrook, Illinois, a suburb of Chicago. There, his father found work selling roofing materials. 1. Hughes attended Grove Middle School, later going on to Glenbrook North High School, which gave him inspiration for the films that eventually made his reputation. 6. He met Nancy Ludwig, a cheerleader and his future wife, in high school. 7. As a teenager, Hughes turned to movies as an escape. According to childhood friend Jackson Peterson, his mom and dad criticized him a lot. She, Marion, would be critical of what John would want to do. 8. Hughes was a fan of the Beatles. 1. And allegedly knew a lot about movies and the Rat Pack. 9. Career. 1970 to 1981, rise to prominence. After dropping out of the University of Arizona, 10, Hughes began selling jokes to well-established performers such as Rodney Dangerfield and Joan Rivers. 11. Hughes used his jokes to get an entry-level job at Needham, Hopper and Steers as an advertising copywriter in Chicago in 1970, 12, and later in 1974 at Leo Burnett Worldwide. During this period, he created what became the famous Edge credit card shaving test ad campaign. Hughes' work on the Virginia Slims account frequently took him to the Philip Morris headquarters in New York City, which allowed him to visit the offices of National Lampoon magazine. 1. Soon thereafter, Hughes became a regular contributor. Wink with a frown. 13. Editor P. J. Hawork recalled that John wrote so fast and so well that it was hard for a monthly magazine to keep up with him. 14. One of Hughes' first stories, inspired by his family trips as a child, 11, was Vacation, 58, 15, later to become the basis for the film National Lampoon's Vacation, 13. Among his other contributions to the Lampoon, the April Fool's Day stories, My Penis and My Vagina, gave an early indication of Hughes' ear for the particular rhythm of teen speak, as well as for the various indignities of teenage life in general. 1982 to 1986, Breakthrough and Teen Films. Hughes' first credited screenplay, National Lampoon's Class Reunion, was written while he was still on staff at the magazine. The resulting film became the second disastrous attempt by the flagship to duplicate the runaway success of National Lampoon's Animal House. Hughes' next screenplay for the imprint, however, National Lampoon's Vacation, 13, would become a major hit in 1983. This, along with the success of another Hughes script that same year, Mr. Mom, earned him a 3-film deal with Universal Pictures. 16. Hughes' directorial debut, 16 Candles, 1984, won almost unanimous praise when it was released in 1984, due in no small part to its more honest depiction of navigating adolescence and the social dynamics of high school life in stark contrast to the Porky's-inspired comedies made at the time. It was the first in a string of efforts about teenage life set in or around high school, including The Breakfast Club, 1985, Weird Science, 1985, and Ferris Bueller's Day Off, 1986, all of which she wrote and directed, and Pretty in Pink, 1986, and Some Kind of Wonderful, 1987, which she wrote and produced. 1987 to 2008, Beyond Teen Movies. To avoid being pigeonholed as a maker of only teen movies, Hughes branched out in 1987 by writing, directing, and producing the hit comedy Planes, Trains and Automobiles starring Steve Martin and John Candy. His later output was not so well received critically, with films like Dutch, 1991, written and produced by Hughes, performing poorly at the box office. Films like Uncle Buck and National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation, however, proved popular. His final film as a director was 1991's Curly Sue. By that time, in 1991, his John Hughes Entertainment production company had signed various deals with 20th Century Fox and Warner Brothers. 17. Actor John Candy created many memorable roles in films written, directed, or produced by Hughes, including National Lampoon's Vacation, 1983, Planes, Trains and Automobiles, 1987, The Great Outdoors, 1988, Uncle Buck, 1989, Home Alone, 1990, Career Opportunities and Only the Lonely, both 1991. Over the years, Hughes and Candy developed a close friendship. Hughes was greatly shaken by Candy's sudden death from a heart attack in 1994. He talked a lot about how much he loved Candy. If Candy had lived longer, I think John would have made more films as a director, says Vince Vaughn, a friend of Hughes. 1. Hughes' greatest commercial success came with Home Alone, 1990, a film he wrote and produced about a child accidentally left behind when his family goes away for Christmas, forcing him to protect himself and his house from a pair of inept thieves. Hughes completed the first draft of Home Alone in just 9 days. 18. Home Alone was the top-grossing film of 1990 and remains the most successful live-action family comedy of all time. He followed up with the sequels Home Alone 2, Lost in New York in 1992 and Home Alone 3 in 1997. Some of the subsequent films he wrote and produced during this time also contained elements of the Home Alone formula, including the successful Dennis the Menace, 1993, and the box office flop Baby's Day Out, 1994. He also wrote screenplays under the pseudonym Edmond Dantes, or Dantes, after the protagonist of Alexander Dumas's novel The Count of Monte Cristo. Screenplays credited to the Dantes nom de plume include Made in Manhattan, Drobit Taylor, and Beethoven, 11. In 1970, the then 20-year-old Hughes married Nancy Ludwig, 14, whom he had met in high school. Together they had 2 children, John Hughes III, born in 1976, and James Hughes, born in 1979. They were together until his death in 2009. Nancy Hughes died on September 15, 2019, 30. P.J. O'Rourke wrote that, "I have no idea how, or if, John voted. John and I never bothered to talk much about our politics. What we did talk about was the 20th century's dominant scrambled egghead bien pensant batinsky parlor pinko righty tighty lefty loosey nut fudge notion that middle-class American culture was junk, that middle-class Americans were passive dim bulbs, that America itself was a flop and that America's suburbs were a living hell almost beyond the power of John Cheever's words to describe. We were becoming conservatives, in the most conservational sense. There were things that others before us had achieved and these were worth conserving. Family was the most conservative thing about John. Walking across the family room in your stocking feet and stepping on a Lego, ouch, was the fundamental building block of society." The pilot episode of the NBC comedy Community, broadcast on September 17, 2009, was dedicated to Hughes, 42. The episode included several references to The Breakfast Club and ended with a cover of Don't You Forget About Me. The One Tree Hill episode title, Don't You Forget About Me, broadcast on February 1, 2010, ended with a scene similar to the ending scene of 16 Candles. It also contained references to other Hughes movies such as Home Alone. The 2011 Bob's Burgers episode, Sheesh! Cab, Bob, also paid homage to 16 Candles. The teen comedy Easy A, 2010, starring Emma Stone paid tribute to Hughes and his films at the very end, where Stone's character states she wishes her life were a John Hughes movie by showing various clips of 16 Candles, The Breakfast Club, and Ferris Bueller's Day Off, 43, while primarily satirizing later 90s teen comedies. The parody film Not Another Teen Movie references a number of John Hughes' 80s films including 16 Candles, Breakfast Club, and Pretty in Pink, and is set at a fictional John Hughes High School. 44. After Hughes' death, many of those who knew him commented on the impact Hughes had on their lives and on the film industry. Molly Ringwald said, "I was stunned and incredibly sad to hear about the death of John Hughes. He was and will always be such an important part of my life. He will be missed, by me and by everyone that he has touched. My heart and all my thoughts are with his family now." 45. Matthew Broderick also released his own statement, saying, "I am truly shocked and saddened by the news about my old friend John Hughes. He was a wonderful, very talented guy and my heart goes out to his family." 45. The 82nd Academy Awards, 2010, included a tribute to Hughes' work. A retrospective of clips from Hughes' films was followed by cast members from several of them, including Molly Ringwald, Matthew Broderick, MacaulayCulkin, Judd Nelson, Ally Sheedy, Anthony Michael Hall, and John Cryer, 46, gathering on stage to commemorate Hughes and his contributions to the film industry, 47. In 2018, The New Yorker published an article written by Ringwald in which she critiqued Hughes' films, in the age of #MeToo, beginning with a discussion of how she explained to her 10-year-old daughter what happened in a Breakfast Club scene when her character seems to be sexually assaulted under a desk, 48. In this article and later statements, Ringwald clarified that despite her affection for Hughes and gratitude for what he did for her career, she views his sexualized depiction of young women as problematic when contrasted with modern attitudes. Hughes' work has also influenced a new generation of millennial filmmakers, 49, including Ham H. Murray of Teenagers fame, who has cited Hughes as one of his main influences. In interviews, 51, Murray stated, "I loved how John Hughes wrote teens. They were flawed in this genuine sort of way." 52, Kelly Fremont Craig, who wrote and directed The Edge of 17, also cited Hughes as an influence. 54, John M. Chu, director of Crazy Rich Asians and Wicked, cited Hughes as among the influences on his directing style. 55. Hughes is referenced in the song Hello Chicago by the collaborative project between Yezu and Sun Kill Moon and appears on the album 30 Seconds to the Decline of Planet Earth. 56. Mark Kozelek recalls a phone conversation with Hughes in which Kozelek asked him for $15,000 in order to release his album Songs for a Blue Guitar, released by his band the Red House Painters. Hughes agreed, stating, "You're young and on the rise, and I'm just an old man living in Chicago." British indie pop band the 1975 cites Hughes as an influence in the band's music. Macy Peters released a song called John Hughes Movie in 2021. 57. Hughes' films served as inspiration for the style and tone of the Marvel Cinematic Universe film Spider-Man: Homecoming, directed by John Watts, who took inspiration from films such as Ferris Bueller's Day Off. In New York City, 2 days before Thanksgiving, advertising executive Neil Page is eager to return to his family in Chicago. After a prolonged business meeting with an indecisive client, Neil struggles to secure a taxi during rush hour. Although he bribes a man to give up a cab he has hailed, another man swoops in and takes it instead. Neil arrives at LaGuardia Airport to discover that his flight is delayed. While waiting, he encounters Del Griffith, a chatty and affable traveling shower curtain ring salesman who unknowingly took his cab. Del's overly friendly demeanor immediately clashes with Neil's uptight and repressed personality. Adding to his frustration, Neil's first-class seat is reassigned to a cramped coach seat, right next to Del, on the flight to O'Hare International Airport. A blizzard in Chicago forces the plane to divert to Wichita, Kansas, leaving Neil and Del stranded overnight. At hotel check-in, they inadvertently swap credit cards. With only one room available, the two are forced to share a double bed. Frustrated by Del's irritating behavior, Neil loses his temper and harshly criticizes him. Del admits his shortcomings but asserts that he likes himself as he is, as does his wife. His response humbles Neil. While they sleep, a thief breaks into their room and steals their cash. The next day, with air travel severely delayed, Neil purchases train tickets to Chicago for himself and Del, opting for separate compartments. He bids Del farewell, but their journey is interrupted when the locomotive breaks down near Jefferson City, Missouri, leaving passengers stranded in a field. Spotting Del struggling with his trunk, Neil decides to help, and the two reunite before traveling by bus to St. Louis. During a meal, Neil upsets Del by suggesting they continue their journey separately, leading to another parting of ways. At Lambert Airport in St. Louis, Neil attempts to rent a car but finds it missing when he reaches the lot. Infuriated, he delivers an expletive-filled tirade to a car rental employee and then attempts to book a taxi to Chicago. He insults the dispatcher, who responds by punching him in the face. By chance, Del arrives in a rental car and offers Neil a ride. That night, Del nearly kills them when he inadvertently drives the wrong way on a freeway. After narrowly avoiding disaster and pulling over, Del's carelessly discarded cigarette ignites the car, setting it ablaze. Neil initially laughs, believing that Del is liable for the damage. However, Del confesses that he found Neil's credit card in his wallet, used it to rent the car, and then returned it to Neil's wallet, which is in the vehicle. With his credit cards destroyed, Neil barters his expensive watch for a motel room but refuses to help Del. Unable to afford a room, Del attempts to sleep outside in the frigid temperatures and snow. Reflecting aloud, Del laments needing someone whose company he genuinely enjoys, only to drive them away with his overbearing behavior. Neil feels pity for Del and invites him to share the room. The two bond over drinks, reminiscing about their chaotic journey. On Thanksgiving Day, the pair continues their journey in the burned car until a state trooper impounds it for being unroadworthy. Del persuades a truck driver to give them a ride to Chicago, albeit in the truck's refrigerated trailer. At a Chicago Del station, Neil thanks Del for helping him get home, and the two part amicably. However, as Neil rides the train, he reflects on Del's peculiar comments and silences during their journey. Troubled, Neil returns to the station and finds Del sitting alone. Del confesses that he has no permanent home and has been living on the road since his wife's death 8 years earlier. Neil brings Del home with him and introduces his family to his new friend. Planes, Trains, and Automobiles began filming in February 1987 and lasted 85 days. 7. It was filmed mostly in Batavia, New York, and South Dayton, New York. 8. A scene that takes place in St. Louis was filmed at St. Louis Lambert International Airport. 9. 10. There was also a scene in Braidwood, Illinois, at the Sun Motel, as well as a scene in Woodstock, Illinois, where the city's old courthouse was shown. 11. Rewrites John Hughes did as well as improvisation between Candy and Martin Duran. Filming resulted in the film's first cut being 3 hours and 45 minutes long, featuring a number of additional characters and subplots. 7. One tease subplot about Neil's wife not believing him and suspecting that he is with another woman was cut. This explains why she is so happy to see Del at the end of the film. The young man who robs Neil and Del at the Braidwood Inn was the pizza delivery man who dropped the beer in the hallway, causing a can to burst when Neil attempts to open it. He came back and robbed them because Del didn't give him a good tip. 7. Another deleted subplot showed the state trooper revealing that Del and Neil actually drove past Chicago and had been pulled over in Wisconsin. This explains why it took them 2 days to get to Chicago from St. Louis and why the state trooper has a Wisconsin patch on his uniform. 12. Soundtrack. The soundtrack to Planes, Trains, and Automobiles features a mix of rock and roll, country, and pop. The frenetic musical score by Ira Newborn makes extensive use of the folk song, Red River Valley, including a cover of Johnny and the Hurricanes' rock and roll version, Red River Rock, performed by the British group Silicon Teens. Among other tracks is a cover version of Back in Baby's Arms. The song, popularized by Patsy Cline, is performed by Emmylou Harris. Another popular song used in the movie is Mess Around, written by Ahmet Erdogan and performed by Ray Charles. A cover version of 6 Days on the Road was used in the film, performed by Steve Earle and the Dukes. The film also featured the contemporary pop song, Modigliani, Lost in Your Eyes, by Book of Love, used in both the original single and the Requiem Mass remix. A special instrumental version of Power to Believe by the Dream Academy, which the band recorded at Hughes's request, is extensively used in the film as Dell's unofficial theme. A cover of Every Time You Go Away, performed by Blue Room, is played over the final scene and the credits. Hughes planned to use Paul Young's well-known hit version but was denied the rights by the record company even though Young approved of Hughes's planned use of the song and wanted to see it included. 13. The soundtrack album was released in 1987 as a physical vinyl and compact disc, but has since gone out of print. It is available for download on iTunes. 14. Every Time You Go Away and Power to Believe were not included on the album. The soundtrack instead featured the original version of Power to Believe with lyrics. The instrumental version of Power to Believe was not released until 2014, when the Dream Academy included it on its compilation album The Morning Lasted All Day, a retrospective release. Box office. The movie opened in American theaters on November 25, 1987, the day before Thanksgiving, and finished third for the weekend, grossing $7,009,482. After its first 5 days, the film grossed $10,131,242 and stayed in the top 10 for 7 weeks. The movie finished its 12-week American run on January 22, 1988, with $49,530,280.15. The production budget was $15 million. 3. The film was released in the United Kingdom on February 12, 1988, and topped the country's box office that weekend. 16. Reception. Planes, Trains, and Automobiles marked a widely noticed change in the repertoire of John Hughes, generally considered a teen angst filmmaker at the time. 17. 18. It was greeted with critical acclaim upon release. 19. 20. 21. 22. In particular receiving 2 thumbs up from Siskel and Ebert, with Gene Siskel declaring it Candy's best role to date. The film was featured in Roger Ebert's Great Movies collection, Ebert writing that it is perfectly cast and soundly constructed, and all else flows naturally. Steve Martin and John Candy don't play characters, they embody themselves. That's why the comedy, which begins securely planted in the twin genres of the road movie and the buddy picture, is able to reveal so much heart and truth. 23. Leonard Maltin called the movie a bittersweet farce, arguing that while the film was hurt by an awful music score, Hughes refuses to make either one, Martin or Candy, a caricature, which keeps this amiable film teetering between slapstick shenanigans and compassionate comedy. 24. On Rotten Tomatoes, the film holds an approval rating of 93% based on 66 reviews, with an average score of July 9, 10. The site's critics' consensus states, thanks to the impeccable chemistry between Steve Martin and John Candy, as well as a deft mix of humor and heart, Planes, Trains, and Automobiles is a hilarious, heartfelt holiday classic. 25. On Metacritic it has a score of 72 out of 100 based on 22 critics, indicating generally favorable reviews. 26. Audiences polled by CinemaScore gave the film an average grade, B+, on scale of A+ to F. High school senior Andy Walsh lives with her underemployed working-class father, Jack, in a Chicago suburb. Andy's best friend, an outsider named Philip Ducky Dale, is in love with her, but is afraid to tell her how he truly feels. In school, Ducky and Andy, along with their friends, are harassed and bullied by the arrogant, witchy, and popular kids, specifically Benny Hansen and her boyfriend, Steph McKee, who finds Andy attractive and secretly resents having been rejected by her. Andy works after school at Trax, a hip record store managed by the quirky 30-something Iona. Andy starts talking about her school's senior prom to Iona, who advises her to go, despite not having a date. Blaine McDonough, one of the preppy boys and Steph's best friend, falls for Andy and eventually asks her out. On the night of the date, Andy waits for Blaine at Trax, but he is late. Ducky enters and asks her to go out with him, but she ignores him. When Blaine arrives, Ducky becomes upset and argues with Andy before storming off. Blaine brings Andy to Steph's house party, where Andy is bullied by the rich partygoers. Andy then brings Blaine to a local nightclub, where Iona is sitting with Ducky, who is hostile and jealous toward Blaine. After another argument with Ducky, Andy and Blaine walk out of the club. She tells him she wants to go home, but refuses to let him bring her there, confessing she doesn't want him to see where she lives. Andy eventually allows Blaine to drop her off. He asks her to the prom and they share their first kiss. Andy visits Iona the next day to talk about the date. Meanwhile, Blaine, pressured by Steph, Benny, and rich friends, begins distancing himself from Andy. Jack presents Andy with a pink dress that he has bought for her. However, they begin to argue because he has been lying about going to a full-time job. Jack breaks down, revealing that he is still bitter and depressed about his wife having left them. At school, Andy confronts Blaine for avoiding her and not returning her calls. When asked about the prom, he claims that he had already asked somebody else but had forgotten. Andy calls Blaine a liar, saying he is ashamed of being seen with her as his rich friends will not approve. Andy runs away as a teary-eyed Blaine leaves, with Steph trashing Andy as he passes. Ducky overhears Steph and attacks him in the hallway. The two fight before teachers intervene. Andy goes to Iona, upset about what happened, and asks for her old prom dress. Using the fabric from Iona's dress and the dress that her father had bought, Andy creates a pink prom dress. When she arrives at the prom, Andy has second thoughts about braving the crowd on her own until she sees Ducky. They reconcile and walk into the ballroom hand in hand. As a drunk Steph begins mocking the couple, Blaine confronts him and finally realizes that Steph resents Andy because she had turned down his advances. He calls him out on his spoiled and entitled attitude, saying that he no longer wishes to associate with him. Blaine shakes Ducky's hand and apologizes to Andy, telling her that he always believed in her and that he will always love her, kissing her cheek before walking out. Ducky points out to Andy that Blaine went to the prom alone and concedes that Blaine is not like the other rich kids at school and advises Andy to go after him, joking that he will never take her to another prom if she does not. He then sees a girl smiling at him, signaling him to come over and dance. Andy catches up with Blaine in the parking lot and they kiss. Charlie Sheen was considered for the role of Blaine, but Ringwald convinced the filmmakers to cast McCarthy instead. 8. Anthony Michael Hall turned down the role of Ducky because he didn't want to be typecast. 9. Ringwald lobbied for Robert Downey Jr. to be cast as Ducky but agreed that Cryer made sense in light of the film's revised ending. 10. Jennifer Beals turned down the role of Andy Walsh. 11. Jodie Foster, Sarah Jessica Parker, Tatum O'Neal, and Lori Loughlin were also considered. 12. Production. Origin. Ringwald said that she introduced Hughes to the psychedelic first song of the same name, which inspired Hughes to write the screenplay. 13. Production. Deutsch felt there was something missing in the opening scene. Hughes later wrote the scene where Jack tells Andy maybe she could add some ruffles underneath his t-shirt. 14. Changed ending. Originally, the film portrayed Andy and Ducky ending up together. 15. However, test audiences booed this ending. 16. John Hughes wrote a new 5-page ending where Andy and Blaine get together instead. This was shot several months after the film wrapped production, and was filmed in one day on a soundstage designed to look like the Los Angeles hotel ballroom where the first ending had been filmed. 17. When called back to film the new scene, Andrew McCarthy was in pre-production for a stage play, and had lost weight and cut his hair for the stage role, so he was fitted with a wig for the reshoot. 18. Molly Ringwald had anticipated that audiences would be dissatisfied with the original ending, saying, "It didn't make sense to have the entire movie be this Cinderella story, yet she doesn't get to end up with the guy she wants." Ringwald has said Ducky was based on her best friend, who was gay and with whom she had an extremely non-romantic relationship. 19. John Cryer has stated that he was shocked that the test audience was unhappy about the pairing, and felt that the whole film was built around Andy and Ducky ending up together. 20. 21. Hughes aimed to protect Ducky's character in the new ending by having another girl at the prom show interest in him, played by Christy Swanson in her first theatrical film role and credited as Duckette. 17. Paramount executives were also apprehensive about the original ending, worried that the film might be perceived as classist and as suggesting that wealthy people and poor people should not interact. Orchestral Maneuvers in the Dark had written the song "Goddess of Love" for the original ending, which they later rewrote and released on the album The Pacific Age. 22. Hughes didn't consider the song a good fit for the newly reshot Andy/Blaine ending and asked the band to write something else. With only 2 days before going on tour, OND wrote, "If you leave in less than 24 hours." 23. Paramount has said that they have been unable to locate the footage of the original ending. 19. Dedication. In the closing credits, the film is dedicated to actress Alexa Kennan and set designer Bruce Weintraub, both of whom died shortly after production had finished. Novel. The film was adapted into a novel written by H.B. Gilmore and Randy Reesfield, released in 1986. It was published by Bantam Books, ISBN 0-553-25944-Gex. ISBN 978-05532594445. The book was written before the last scene was changed, so it has the original ending in which Andy ends up with Ducky instead of Blaine. Release. Box office. Pretty in Pink was the top-grossing film for the week of March 12, 1986. 24. The film earned $6.1 million during its opening weekend and $40.5 million during its theatrical run. It was the 22nd highest-grossing film of 1986. 25. Reception. On review aggregator Rotten Tomatoes, the film holds an approval rating of 75% based on 56 reviews, with an average rating of June 4, 10. The site's consensus reads, "Molly Ringwald gives an outstanding performance in this sweet, intelligent teen comedy that takes an ancient premise and injects it with insight and wit." 26. Metacritic, which uses a weighted average, assigned the film a score of 56 out of 100, based on 22 critics, indicating mixed or average reviews. 27. Audiences polled by CinemaScore gave the film an average grade of B+ on an A+ to F scale. Roger Ebert gave the film 3 stars out of 4, criticizing the old plot but praising the performances of Molly Ringwald and Annie Potts, and calling it a heartwarming and mostly truthful movie with some nice touches of humor. 28. Janet Maslin of the New York Times wrote, "Fortunately, the actors are mostly likable, and the story is told gently enough to downplay both its trendiness and its conventionality." 29. James Harwood of Variety wrote, "In his mid-30s, John Hughes' much-vaunted teen thinking now seems to be maturing a bit in Pretty in Pink, a rather intelligent, if not terribly original, look at adolescent insecurities." Teamed with Hughes for the third time, Molly Ringwald is herself growing as an actress, lending Pink a solid emotional center that largely boils down to making the audience care about her. 30. Pauline Kael of The New Yorker wrote that Ringwald carries the movie, though she has nothing particularly interesting to do or say, and called the film slight and vapid, with the consistency of watery jello. 31. Gene Siskel of the Chicago Tribune gave the film 1.5 stars out of 4, faulting a tired script and Crier's one-note performance, though he found Ringwald absolutely beguiling. 32. Patrick Goldstein of the Los Angeles Times called the film delightful, adding that what makes Pretty in Pink such a satisfying, big-hearted film isn't its creaky storyline or its somewhat unconvincing conclusion, but the way it lets us watch kids through their own eyes, exploring feelings instead of making caricatures of them. Written by Hughes and directed by newcomer Howard Deutsch, the movie neatly captures the nuances of youth, reminding us how the most casual remark can unleash a flood of insecurities. 33. As with previous films by John Hughes, Pretty in Pink featured a soundtrack composed mostly of new wave music. While director Howard Deutsch originally intended the film to primarily contain theme music, Hughes influenced Deutsch's decision to use post-punk music throughout the film. The title song by the Psychedelic Furs acted as a bit of inspiration for the film and was re-recorded specifically for the film's opening sequence in a version that was less raw than the original version that appeared on the 1981 album Talk Talk Talk. Left of Center was remixed by Ifer Baker. The first track, If You Leave, by Orchestral Maneuvers in the Dark, was written in 1985 specifically for the film. In addition to their soundtrack song, Shell Shock, New Order also contributed an instrumental version of Thieves Like Us and the instrumental Halegia, both of which appear in the film but not on the soundtrack. The Ray VPS, who appear in the film performing Positively Lost Me and Shut Up from their Town and Country album, do not have any songs on the soundtrack album. Nick Kershaw's Wouldn't It Be Good appears on the soundtrack in a version by former Three Dog Night vocalist Danny Hutton's band, Danny Hutton Hitters. The Smiths' Please 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 Let Me Get What I Want appears on the soundtrack and was later covered by the Autumns for the 2000 Isn't She Still? The original motion picture soundtrack revisited album. Also noteworthy is the inclusion of Echo and the Bunnymen's Bring on the Dancing Horses, which, according to the liner notes of the CD release of the band's compilation album Songs to Learn and Sing, was recorded specifically for the film.